I guess we have about a few seconds left.
Okay. Do we have people joining, or is it just you and I? Did?
You and I on Zoom, then they would join on YouTube Live. So it's
Oh,
like
okay.
a private something.
Okay, that's good.
Okay. All right. So it's 4 p.m. already. I think we can get started. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us once again on another webinar session with NAGELSS. And today we're having Dr. Gift Iyioku with us, and I'll be reading a brief introduction about her before we go into the discussions. Our speaker today is Dr. Gift Iyioku, a doctoral candidate in German studies with a minor in political science at Stanford University. She's also a student research analyst at the Hoover Institution, where she works on policy-oriented research focusing on US-Africa relations and human capital development. Dr. Iyioku has taught German language and humanities courses at Stanford and previously served as a graduate teaching assistant at the University of Alabama. Her professional background includes roles at UNESCO, the Africa Progress Group, and co-founding the KG Language School in Ibadan. With experience spanning academia, policy research, and international development, she brings a unique interdisciplinary perspective to questions of migration, governance, and African German encounters. So, such a powerful profile, I would say. Before we head into the questions, do you want to give a sort of background as how you got into the German studies at the University of Ibadan and what kept you going up to now?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Well, I mean, you've already said, I think, everything about me, about my profile and my background. So, my journey into German studies was very unplanned. I had taken French in secondary school, just like so many of us in Nigeria, and I was not like the I was good, but I was very mediocre. I was just doing the best thing I could do to just pass my exams and move on. But I wasn't really like keen on languages or foreign languages. So when I applied to the University of Ibadan to study communication and language arts, that's mass communication, I had passed the JAM, I'd passed the post UTME, and then they released the cutoff after the post UTME exams. And that was when I realized that I didn't get enough. My score was not high enough. I think I was like 2 or 3 marks off to study communication and language arts at the University of Ibadan. So I like applied for a change of course, and then I switched, and I had to choose between I think anthropology and German, and some other courses where they did not really have enough students and they wanted more students. So I chose, and I think education. So I just chose German because that was like the only I think different routes. There was also French, but I felt like French was already like widely spoken. So German just appealed to me in the sense of it's like really like foreigners. There was no like the way we have like French speaking countries in Africa. We don't have as much German speaking like communities or societies or like countries. So that was why I chose German. There was nothing like special or like So I just chose it because it was strange, it was foreign, and there were not so many people learning. And then I started with German. I was planning to switch back to communication in my second year, but I finished my first year with a very good result, and I realized I could survive, like doing German as for an undergrad degree program. So I just continued with it, and that's how my journey began.
Oh, thank you very much. That's quite interesting. I've met a couple of people that also just happens to pick German because French is quite popular, like you said, and German gives
Yeah.
that uniqueness, so to say. Okay, so you have a combination of German studies and political science. How do these fields, I mean, German studies and political science, how do they inform each other in your research and academic journey? How do they juxtapose,
Yeah.
interrelate?
So my entry into political science, interestingly, I've always been much more interested in the historical part of like German studies. So when I was an undergrad, in my third year, we began like proper intro into German colonialism in Africa, German foreign policy and all of that. And I realized that was what really interested me. I could read it like over and over again teach it to people. I was like it was just like a natural interest for me. And also, so like we did all the courses on like German, history and all of that in Africa. And then afterwards, I did my NYC, and I was posted to the Africa Progress Group and the UNESCO Institute at OPL, at the Olusegun Obasanjo Presidential Library. So I was working with President Obasanjo and Professor Okebukola and so many like top like people in like academia that were also in politics. So that was actually my first introduction into the fusion of academia and like political science and policy. And the work I did there was strongly on Africa and Africa progress. So when I decided to do my master's, I was already like leaning more towards the social and political aspect of my studies. So I took some courses at the University of Alabama with Dr. Razma Latsta on immigration, like intercultural literature, and how we can figure out and encounter like migration narratives even in literature, and theorize all of these things, how this affects lives, how policies are created through like all of these narratives. So there was like a real fusion. Literature itself really fuses like the social and the political and so many aspects of our lives in it. So it was very easy for me to just combine both of them, to like just fuse the interest I already had in like politics and policy with my German studies. So I moved deeper into like literature, but the social and political aspect of literature. And then afterwards, I got into Stanford, and I had already sent an email to my supervisor before getting admitted to Stanford, asking if I would be given the opportunity to explore my interests in political science and history. And he agreed. He said, as long as I take the required subjects for my own like primary major course, I can do whatever it is that I like. And that's why I really am thankful that I got to do my PhD in Stanford, because as soon as I got into Stanford, one of my mentors, my academic mentors, she told me that I could take a minor in political science. That was like, to me, that was like a light bulb moment. I thought I would just like take courses. I didn't know that I could even like add it to my degree and do like an official PhD minor in political science. So immediately I was able to do that. I just like ran with it. Like from my very first year, I already like signed up for a minor. It was already like attached to my Stanford profile that I have a minor in political science, or that I'm doing a minor in political science. And then I focus on the international relations and political theory aspects of it. And it just flowed naturally. Like my work in German informs my political science, minor. And also because having a background in literature really teaches you to be deeply analytical, critical in your thoughts and thinking and all of that. So that's really helps me like easily to transition or to like add my background knowledge in literature into political science. And also when I'm doing my work in literature as well, I'm able to think about politics and policy. When I'm reading these literature works, I'm trying to analyze and like theorize from this. I'm thinking about politics like in the background. So it was like a very easy fusion. It wasn't like very distant or very unrelated. They're very quite similar and quite related.
Oh, thank you very much. I love how because politics is very much important in our everyday life these days. So I love the way brought both of them together, and now you're still like focusing on it. It's impressive. Then the next one, working as a graduate teaching assistant in both German language and humanities courses, what teaching approaches have you found most effective for engaging students in German studies?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, because I actually really love teaching. It's just that I think my interests are more like towards research and like policy, but I really love teaching. And I've interestingly always gotten very positive evaluation from my students. Like 95% of my teaching evaluation is students saying they really love how I teach. And for me, what's like the most important thing for me in teaching is connection and understanding of you and empathy of students. I think being a very graduate teaching assistant is very important, because you get to be a student while also being a teacher. So it's not very far-fetched to be able to put yourself in your student's shoes and remember how classes were for you and what you wished your teachers could have done better, and just infuse it into your classes. And it's very common, I'm sure you also know, like sometimes you finish teaching as a teacher and then the very next hour you're going to your own class as a student. So like I can literally just take the lessons I'm learning from like one class and just and just infuse it into my own teaching in the next class. So to me, it's like it was very helpful being both a student and a teacher at the same time, because I could easily just like pick some of the things I want to change in my class, some of the things I want to introduce in my class from the classes that I'm taking myself as a student, and just like, teach it to my students, or just even the empathy of knowing how my life feels as a student, and translating that to how I also treat my students. So that's really like how I see it. It's just empathy, understanding, and like a genuine connection with your students, to be able to know where they're at and how to help and support them. That's how I really view this.
Okay. So connection, understanding, and empathy. I think that's what most teachers, irrespective of the field, should have when interacting with new learners, so they can students can be free and not feel pressured unnecessarily. So, thank you very much for that. Next question: as an edge mentor, you supported new graduate students. What do you think first generation or international students, especially Nigerians, Africans, what do they need most when entering graduate school in the United States?
Yeah. So when I was an edge mentor, I don't think I came across, I didn't like mentor any students from Africa, like even broadly speaking, like Africa generally. My mentees were from Turkey, Germany, some other like parts of the country. However, in light of like mentorship to like first generation students from like lower like income countries and developing nations, especially Nigeria, since I'm Nigerian and I don't really want to like be too broad in my statement. What I realize is, from my own perspective and my own like personal experience, because the foundation of our education is very shaky. We have like our education like syllabus, so many things like needs to be revamped, reformed. I realize that makes us lag behind in so many ways when we get into like developed countries or like more or higher income countries where there's like more funding for teachers, more funding for research, and there's like just also more research happening and being churned out of like public institutions. That's one thing that we really lack in Nigeria. And when you get to the US, I think at some points it's really overwhelming, and it can also be intimidating in a way that's like very unfamiliar, because many of us are like, we come to the US as top students from Nigeria, and then when you get here it's like, wait, did I even deserve to be like the best student in my class, because I don't know these basic things. I don't know how to like even like properly structure a research paper in a way that's publishable. And these are things that undergrads in the US in their first year can do and write like excellent papers. And that's not because of our own personal failures. It's because of the educational system that we are coming from. That's because of the like underpay of our teachers. They weren't able to, they could do just so much with so little that they had. So I can't blame myself. I can't blame my lecturers who were very severely underpaid. But it's just the fact that we have to come here. You have to learn a lot of things. You have to do your own like background research. You have to like, as a like first generation student, as an immigrant student from like developing countries, you have to learn a lot on your own. I have to like read a lot of like on my own. I had to teach like the American academia. I had to also learn to also like interact with literature, with secondary articles, primary sources in ways that I'd never learned in Nigeria. So it's a lot of like self-learning, self-development. So if I could like speak to any Nigerian students maybe on their way to the US for their grad studies, one thing I would tell them is to know that in countries where a lot of funding goes into academia, goes into research and public institutions, the expectation is different. It's higher. It's not mediocre. And it can be overwhelming, and you can prevail, you can definitely succeed, but you have to be aware of these limitations that you have, because if not, you're going to be so frustrated getting corrections, feedback, your professor's telling you this is not good enough, it's not good enough, like go back and ask some more, like argue your point, I want to hear your voice. There's so many things that you hear, you're like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know how to do this things you're talking about, because nobody ever taught us. And for many of us, our parents also maybe don't even have a PhD, they may have like a master's degree, but it's the same shaky foundation, shaky educational foundation that they had, that we also have. So it's going to be a lot of learning. It's going to be a lot of like you reading like theoretical books on how to write, how to analyze your points, how to argue, how to even like contribute in class in ways that we are not even used to in Nigeria. how to not just sit and expect to be fed knowledge, how to find your own knowledge and research. A lot of all those things that you have to learn, but it's surmountable. It's not like it's not impossible to achieve great success if you're able to surmount all those like boundaries and obstacles.
Yeah. As a first year graduate student myself, I can relate with all those points because I wrote a couple of papers and it's all like, and the professor was like, don't be overwhelmed. There are a lot of corrections on the paper, but you did well. So they are encouraging, but I mean, one can still see that loophole, so to say. Just on a side note, if you were to give a lot of recommendations, say for year one students, because it's one thing to want to explore and do this research and see how it is being done, but if the lecturers or mentors they have are not like forthcoming, is there a way they can go around that?
Unfortunately, you have to do it on your own because you need it, especially if you want to go further in academia. If you want to be a professor in America, for example, it's very sad that your professor or your supervisor is not very like engaged. I was lucky to have very excellent, kind, and very engaging like supervisors, professors, and mentors in the field. So even when my hands were shaky, they held my hands and they even introduced me to people that could even help me be better. So I had that advantage and the privilege of having like great professors. But if you don't have that, then you have to do it on your own. You have to go like to the library. These resources are available. The challenge is that if you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to also be lost in the library because you don't even know what it is that you need. So if you can't talk to your supervisors, maybe talk to someone else. Talk to people like me. Talk to anyone that you feel like has gotten a step further and they are at the point where you want to be, and ask them for the advice on how to get there. Because if your supervisor is not helping, you might go to the library and be lost and you don't even know what to look for. So if you recognize the issue you're having, if it's with writing, for example, and you figured out, oh, I think I keep on getting the same feedback on my writing and I don't know what to do, I'm not really understanding, it would be very good to talk to someone who is from maybe your country, maybe from your like kind of background, even if it's like social background, for example, because you could talk to someone from Nigeria, but they had the privilege of going to maybe like very good private schools or whatever, and they already had that teaching from like when they were young. They may not be able to relate with what you're sharing. If you can get someone that you think had the same struggles as you did and they've been able to overcome it, then it would be very good to talk to someone of that level, of that caliber, because they will probably be able to easily understand. Even if you're not able to pinpoint what exactly the issue is, just sharing like generally or broadly with them, you can be able to find exactly what is going on just through conversation and then get some guidance on how to like overcome the challenge that you're facing. That's what I would advise.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now the next one, you've held several roles at UNESCO and the Africa Progress Group. How did this early policy experiences, how did it shape your long-term academic and professional goals?
So when I was doing my NYC, at the APG and UNESCO, at that point, I had not. I was actually applying to study in Germany under the DART scholarship, and I was applying to do like my master's in, I think, public affairs or like international relations or something, because I was actually very keen on going into the diplomacy and like political science part of like German, but that didn't work out, so I had to switch to German studies. But the background like knowledge I got from working at UNESCO and APG. For example, I was working directly under an ambassador, and every day, as as a core member, I was supposed to like write, very brief like policy briefs, like solutions to like some issues. Just it was like a prompt, so we're given like a prompt. You go home and read about it. You make your own notes, and you present it to the group of like the ambassador. It could be like one of the ambassador present and like the other core members. And then you talk about like solutions to some problems. Of course, it doesn't mean it's going to be, picked up. We're very young. They're just like training us, It doesn't mean that it's going to be implemented or whatever. It was just them training us into how to like look at issues. And they also like argued some points with us. We argue like sometimes if your argument is stronger, you can also table your argument. And I also did some work with like the prime ministers and like some leaders from like African countries during like one major event that President Obasanjo had. So just all of those things, just interacting with like high officials, like politics, interacting with ambassadors, and interacting with even professors, because there were also a lot of professors working with us. That was just like, for me, that was like the entrance, and that was like the eye-opening moment for me into seeing how effective policies can actually transform lives. In Nigeria, a lot of policies are always being like implemented. A lot of policies are being drafted. Some are brilliant, some are like just outright just nonsensical. But even the brilliant policies, the implementation sometimes is shaky. So sometimes it's not even that Nigeria does not have policies that want to like, transform education and all of these things, but it's the implementation. So most of the time, it's implementation that tampers with the effectiveness of some of these policies. So just I was just able to see firsthand how all of these things happen in like behind like closed doors. So that was what really piqued my interest, and that was what really like laid the foundation and the groundwork for me to like go like further into politics and like policy. Policy is where I'll see my work. It's not politics, but yeah, that's I think the groundwork for me. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. For final year student finishing the undergrad and probably they have the same interest as you, how can they like get this opportunities working with UNESCO, working with AGP? How do they like access it?
That's a very hard question because I also did not have connections when I was in Nigeria. I just I was posted to Enugu State and I redeployed to Abeokuta. And if you have a first class, they typically want to post you to like higher institutions. And Abeokuta didn't really have, I think, so many universities. So one of the higher institutions was APG and UNESCO. That was already classified as like tier one institutions, and that was where I was posted to. So it was just I even had to like write a mini like exam sort of or like interview to be accepted. So I don't really have connections. And in Nigeria, it's very difficult to get into these rooms if you don't have the connections. But I would say that if you can like go to these offices and maybe present a CV, but just not your CV, give them like a solid statement to why you want to gain this experience. I think some of them are open to young people knocking on their doors and telling them you should be careful because many people just do it, just very nonchalantly. They just want to do it to have a big name on their CVs. But your purpose has to be greater. It's good to pursue reputation, but your purpose has to be greater than just the reputation. And you have to have a plan. It doesn't even have to be like 10, 20-year plan. But even if it's just a genuine interest and passion in policy, for example, it doesn't have to be government. It can be healthcare policy, for example. You can go knock on the doors of like an NGO taking care of people living with HIV, for example, and tell them that you want to see how they create policies to take care of people living with HIV. Like it can just be something genuine. It doesn't have to always be like knocking on a passenger's door or something. It can just be anything like from the ground level. It doesn't have to be like at the very top, but just like your local government, your like state government office or whatever, the secretariat that can go to and talk to someone. I think some of these people are actually open to having one or two students, knock on their door and like do like some 6-week internship. You have to give them a plan. Tell them you want to be here for 6 weeks. You want to hear like you want to just be there and see how policies are shaped and made and implemented. You want to go with them to like maybe to do some groundwork, for example, as well. You want to like help them, even if it's like just be the PA or just write something down. Just tell them what you can offer them, and then don't like aim like extremely high in a way that it seems impossible. Just enter like from a very low level. Give them your plan, give them your time frame, and see if that will work for you. That's if you don't have the connection, obviously. See if that will work for you. That's how I would advise a final year student to go about that.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very detailed. So push yourself out there and connect local government, ground level.
People do that. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. At the Hoover institution, you transitioned from being a student fellow to being a student research analyst. What skills or habits helped you grow into a more advanced research role?
So it's I would say it's the accumulation of what I've been saying. So I started like from the very like bottom in quotes, not really knowing how to go about research and even knowing the questions to ask, because some research questions are just unnecessary. Like you don't need to like research. You don't need to like carry out research for some things because sometimes the answer is too obvious. or sometimes it's just like like a very complicated question. So I just had a lot of like issues at the beginning trying to be a researcher. But by the time I became a student fellow at the Hoover institution, I already had like solid work that I had done in my own personal like PhD research. And also at that point I'd also I ended up like I was like part of the, let me say, research associate on a report that we did at the APG before I left Nigeria. So all of those things already kind of shaped how I felt about research and also introduced me to the field of research. So as a student fellow, I published an article on education in Nigeria and like the out of school children, and I also like wrote some policies on policy recommendations that could be implemented, and I used like the framework and examples from countries like I'm trying to remember, I think like four countries: Uganda, I think Ghana, Rwanda, Seychelles, Tunisia, like 4 or 5 countries from Africa that have the same, that have like very similar challenges to what we are facing in our education, like in the education sector. And it was quite successful. It was published into like a video format, and it had like over 700,000 views on YouTube, on the Hoover Institution's YouTube account. So it was very successful. And when you do your work well, like it's much more easier to be able to like advocate for yourself to get a higher role when you already have like evidence of your success that's not hidden, like that everyone can see. So it was very easy for me to ask, and apply and get like the next role, which is a student research analyst. So it was like a natural progression based on the evidence of like success in my previous work.
Okay. So basically keeping evidence of success after you might have, engaged yourself in all these works.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that. The next question. Your work engages with US and Africa relations and China's engagement with Africa. How do you see the role of young African scholars in shaping policy or the global policy conversations?
Yes, I mean, ultimately the baton is going to fall into our hands, and we have to know what to do when the time comes. Nigeria is a very young country. We are only about 60 years old. Of course, the concept of like the peoples of Nigeria, we've existed for like thousands of years, but the country itself is very young. And I know people like to make jokes, and I also joke about the fact that the leaders of tomorrow are still the ones, like they are still like begging for power, because the people that started Nigeria are still the ones like holding power in Nigeria. And that's not like shocking. It's not far-fetched. They were like in their 20s and 30s when Nigeria was created, and it's not shocking that they're in their 80s and they're still ruling. It's very popular in like even very developed countries to have like geriatric, politicians still like holding the like power and realm of, like it's at the helm of affairs. It's very common. However, it's going to eventually happen. The founding fathers of America are all dead now. So it's going to eventually happen that the power is going to be passed into our hands. And it's very important that younger Nigerians, whether you're interested in policy and politics and governments or not, to read and to analyze properly and to think critically and to publish and research and do everything that makes like policy to be written properly, to be written brilliantly, to already analyze in advance the problems that we're currently facing with implementation of these policies, and to also know what to expect when power falls into your hands. To already, like, it's not when power falls into your hands that you then start thinking about the problems. It's very possible that the problems that we face now, before people of our generation become the leaders, it's possible that some of them would have been fixed. But what you would have is the experience, that like you already have the experience, you already have the research, you already have like the brilliance in like clarity of thought and analysis, that when the power comes into your hands, even if you're not facing the same issues, you already have the tools and the methodology to know how to fix some of these problems, or to even analyze, even if you're not going to be like a politician, just to have the the tools, even if you're going to just be writing the policies, to be prepared to even do, even if that's just going to be your job, to be prepared to do that excellently. So it's very important that young people are not carried away with like there are so many things that can weigh you down as a Nigerian, that can overwhelm you. But don't get carried away, because eventually the power is going to fall into our hands. And we have to either continue the good work that some of our leaders have done, or to revamp the process entirely. We have to be ready for that. So I would definitely advise I'm like very passionate about education in Nigeria, and I'll be very happy if younger Nigerians can just do away with all of the frivolities. It's very hard because Nigeria is a very challenging country to live in. There are a lot of things that can like hamper your progress in Nigeria. But if you have even just tiny bit of passion and motivation left, hold on to it and nurture it, because it's going to be needed in the next 20 to 40 years. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So the highlight for me was young Africans, young Nigerians should read, analyze critically, do their research, publish articles, basically having clarity of thought. So when the power eventually gets to our hand, we are prepared and ready. Okay, thank you very much. The next one, you co-founded KG Language School in Ibadan. What inspired you to start a language school, and what did that experience teach you about language education in Nigeria?
I was motivated by money. I was in my second year at University of Ibadan, and then someone told me my pocket money at that time was like 5,000 naira a month. That was in 2017 or 16. And someone told me, "Oh, I'm going to pay you 25,000 naira every month to teach my fiancé German." And obviously, like, I couldn't say no. I'm like, what? That's like 5 times my pocket money. And it was just 1 month, actually. The person wanted to teach them for just 1 month. I think 3 times a week, 2 hours per day. That's 6 hours for 25,000 naira. I was more than happy to do that. So that happened. And I realized, oh, this is like a possible stream of income for me as a student. And afterwards, I think I joined an NGO. It's called BNI, Building Nations Initiative. It was headed by Dr. John Oluwadero. He's now a pharmacist. Like, he's now a PhD holder, but then he was a pharmacist. And they also, so part of what they were doing was to also teach like foreign languages to young adults, teenagers, and all of that. So I was then, afterwards I started working for them as the language teacher. And then I just had like some, stints here and there of like teaching German independently, teaching with someone. So by the time I graduated, I'd gone to Germany on a scholarship. I'd like finished with the first class. So I had like the credentials to that people really like, trusted. And I also, I think, taught German like online in Lagos, like in so many places. So people were also like talking about me and my friend Kemi, because we were like one of the two like popular like teachers of like German in Ibadan. So it wasn't rare to just get like a random text message of someone saying like, "I got your number from this person. I want to learn German. Can you teach me German?" And at some point it was okay, teaching individually. So at some point I had like maybe 2 classes on Monday, one on Wednesday, another one on. It was just like random classes here and there that I was like running up and down to teach. So eventually we just decided to like ground it and rent a space. And then whenever we have like people reach out, we then like gather all of the applicants together and then tell them we're going to start teaching like the next 4 weeks. So everyone should be prepared and be in Ibadan. And that was how we made it work. And then over time we just had like there was like constant we're in Nigeria for like maybe 6 to 9 months before traveling to our masters. But within those 6 to 9 months, we were able to actually create like an original like school where we had like every like 3 months we had like enrollments. We had many people. We had about maybe 10 students at the time, and that was a lot of money for like young people just finishing school, getting about 200,000 or 250K, teaching German. So that was how we started, and then we eventually moved to the US. And for me, I think what I've realized is that many Nigerians learn languages when they're at the point of traveling. So they're not really interested because the reasons are obvious in Nigeria. There's really no pathway even for like a German language graduate. So nobody really wants to, like, it's not a hobby for many people. It's just they want to travel. They've gotten their visas. They have like maybe 1 or 2 months left, and then they are like, quickly learning the language. Or their husbands or wives are in Germany. They want to relocate for reunion, and then they're learning the language. So that's what really motivates Nigerians to learn languages. It's not really a hobby because it's paid, and you don't even have money to eat. You're not going to pay like 30,000 then to learn a language for fun. So yeah, it's not really out of like hobby. It's out of necessity to learn languages.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. The
Yeah.
next question. You've completed your Stanford Ignite program in innovation and entrepreneurship. How has this business training influenced your academic or policy work?
Yeah. To be honest, not really. It's just something I picked up because I had the opportunity to. So I applied for it's a 3 months like business school certificate program, and Silicon Valley is like the hub of like it's like the tech hub of like the whole of the US. So I had the opportunity to learn from like some of the best, in business and tech, and these are the people that train founders and advise some of the top companies in the world. And I had the opportunity to be selected like as one of the students, and I took it. Like I just wanted an addition to my knowledge in a field that I would have never gotten the opportunity to participate in, and that was why I took the opportunity. I didn't really think I was going to like go into business, but I just was very happy to. So it's not like a police science minor to me. It's not like a political science minor to me, for example. This was just something entirely different from my trajectory and my career interest that I had the opportunity to as like a result of being a Stanford student that I took. So that was it. It was just me venturing into something different.
Okay. I guess
Yeah.
it's an avenue for you to also just explore something different, like you
Yes.
said. Yeah. Okay. Then the final set of questions. For NAGELSS members aspiring to study in the US, what's a practical advice you would give about navigating the graduate applications, the funding, academic culture, cultural shocks, and transitions from Nigerian system of education to the US system of education?
Yeah. For funding, when I was also like moving to the US, I got information about graduate teaching assistantship, I think about 2 months or 3 months before I moved into the US. So I heard about it first in August, and then I was in the US by December. Prior to that moment, I had no plans to even study in the US. I was bent on going to Germany because I didn't think I could afford like US tuition in any way, and I didn't know of graduate teaching assistantships that would literally like pay your tuition and even give you monthly stipend. So that was very transformative for me. So if I could, I would literally like talk to more students maybe in their final year to explore, universities in the US that have funding and like research funding, and they are interested in like taking students, international students, and funding them to do their research in the US. The door to that is closing, like with the cuts, like currently with the cuts in funding around across America or across the US. It might be more challenging now, but maybe in the coming years, maybe we'll see some changes to it. But universities in the US, at least a couple of them have funding, and they're always happy to fund you if you're going to do your research at their institution. So learn about that. I usually tell people that reach out to me. People that reach out to me think that maybe I have like some folder somewhere on universities that have funding. No, it's just online. Like just go to the department's website, click on funding, they'll give you the information. If you don't find it, write to the professor that you want to work with, or write to the graduate advisor. Their information is always on the school web page. Tell them that you're asking about, of course, admission and also about funding. They'll give you all the information that you need. And of course, I'll also advise them on. So for that's on funding. I already like made my point on research. It's the same. Just you might be overwhelmed and intimidated at first, but take your time to learn what's missing, what's lacking in our education from Nigeria, and then fix it. because if you don't fix it, you're going to be left behind in America very quickly. America is home to like many of the talents of the best in the world. So nobody's trying to, nobody's trying to help you like a lot because people are already there that can do the work. So you have to go home and really like train yourself, build yourself, nurture your own growth so that you can present yourself to as the best, when you come out. And in terms of just like culture shock, there will be culture shocks. We are very different people. I was not shocked by so many things. Other things shocked me. Some things did not shock me. So if you're coming, of course, you're coming to a new community with its own history and its own stories and its own narratives, and learn for yourself. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to, don't let people push their views on you, but learn for yourself. Find what matters to you. Find what's really important to you, and do your own research. Like when you're coming to a new country, the history is always part of the present. The history will always inform the present. So learn your own, like learn the research that you need to be able to understand the society that you're into. You don't even have to. It doesn't even need to translate necessarily into participating in their politics, but just learn it for yourself because it's going to be very important for you as a newcomer in this society, so that you don't work in vain, so that you understand like when some things are working against you or for you. You need to know all of those things. And also you need to also, I think, you need to be very grounded in yourself, because you're coming to a country that has its own narrative of who you are, and they might want to push some narratives on you that you might not want to accept. So you need to be strong in your own identity. You need to know yourself, like, to a very reasonable extent, so that you don't come here and like even just being present in a new society can, and narratives are being pushed on you, can even lead to depression. So if you don't want to, feel that way, you have to already like have a strong sense of self before moving to a new community or a new society, so that you can advocate for yourselves and act for yourself, and then also so that you can just like be able to exist as a full human in society. That's what I would say.
Okay, so build yourself, train yourself, learn for yourself, find what matters to you, then be grounded in yourself, be strong in your identity. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now the final question. Looking ahead, how do you envision combining your expertise in German studies, political thoughts, and African development in your future career?
So right now my work is interestingly tilting, it's leaving German a little bit, at least for now, I don't know for the future, and moving more into development and international engagements in Africa or in Nigeria. That's I'll be very happy that's where my career leads me to, because I believe that everything I'm doing, I want to put Nigeria like, at the center of my work, because Nigeria's development is very important to me. And I think Nigeria has the potential. We are getting there. We're getting some things wrong. It's very common for many countries. Like many countries started with like civil wars and like dissension and a lot of like chaos. So it's we're just 6 years old again. So it's not surprising or shocking that we're having these issues. So it's like I feel like Nigeria will eventually, or I believe Nigeria will get to the point where we have like a streak of consistent, like excellence policy implementation. And I don't mind if my work eventually takes me out of German into Africa development. I don't mind that. So in fact, I'm hoping that's what happens eventually. I want to be like a contributor to the development of Nigeria and Africa at large. So I think that my background in literature, what it really prepared me for was to help me with like, clarity of thoughts, to help me to be able to think like concretely about issues and arguments, and lay out proper analysis of like arguments and like theses and cases and all of that. So that's what my literature background has really prepared me for. So I think that no matter where I find myself, like no matter the career that I end up choosing, or the path I end up um going through, I think that that background I have is going to be what will help me to be able to excel and succeed in the field that I eventually choose. So I don't see them as like separate. I see them as like all interwoven, both my German and my poli sci. I see them as working together for me in like my pursuit of like, the success of Africa and Nigeria at large. I'm all Nigeria and Africa at large. That's how I see it.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the major from everything is the fact that the high concentration on Nigeria and Africa, and policies that would take Nigeria from where we are to where we are meant to be, so to say. Um, Thank you very much for your time. This was a very insightful session, and we are glad you could honor our invitation. And yeah, so
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and thank you for the work that you do. This is also very important, and I hope you can reach out to more and more, maybe like graduate students in the US and even in Nigeria. Some people in Nigeria, some graduate students in Nigeria are doing excellent work, like as researchers in Nigeria. That I hope you can get to reach out to and like talk to and publish it for students that are interested in learning.
okay, we'll definitely work on that. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
So have a great evening.
you too.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Okay.